Hi, everybody. I got Skyler here, recent 100% winner. He deserved it for a long time. So, Skyler, why don't you tell everybody kind of your background and how you came to find us and what we did to help you out?
All right, sounds good. Yeah, so I joined the Navy back in 2020 with a SEAL contract and had wanted to do that for a very long time. And going through that training is pretty rigorous on your body for sure, but ended up dropping out during buds and um, I had been pretty sure that's what I was going to do for a long time, so that ended up being a pretty hard thing to work through mentally. And then on top of that, ended up having some issues with my back and my hips and my knee from the training. Um, and then finish out my contract the next 3.5 years, whatever it was. And um, originally, M2M, you guys had reached out to me through LinkedIn actually, and I was like, "No, I'm good. I'm not gonna do anything." That was my first thought because I didn't really, I guess, know anything about how it worked or anything like that, and I just thought it seemed like I would be kind of complaining at first if I submitted disability or anything, and then one of my friends that was also in training, he started using you guys and told me how helpful it was for him, and so I was like, well, I guess, I'll reach out to him, see what it's about. And that's kind of how I first heard about you guys. And then um, we had, the initial meeting, just seeing if it was the right fit for me and kind of how it would go. And it seemed like it was going to be a pretty good fit, which obviously it was.
Right. And that was
Um,
about a year ago, right? March or even a little bit over
uh,
a year ago,
I
right?
first submitted in May of last year, so not even, or it took under a year to get to 100% for me.
Right. And
Um,
you started off with nothing, right? Never made a claim before, kind of fresh
Yeah,
thing. And
exactly.
we see some people in that category, and I wish we saw more because I think, like in your circumstance, the sooner we can get involved and kind of give that like strategic overview, because there is strategy to it, honestly.
Oh yeah,
But I see a lot of people who are in that 30 to 60% range who've spent 5, 6 years and put it down for a while and then realize like, man, I probably should rate more. So I like
yeah,
talking to guys like you who jump gun with us because I do think that what we provide is pretty beneficial to the process. And obviously you're an anecdote of N of one. However, as we've grown over the past year or two, there's lots of anecdotes. So it's starting to be the trend of what we're doing is working.
absolutely. And yeah, initially going through the process too, I wasn't. It is complicated. I mean, all the information technically is out there, but it would have taken a lot longer to get everything together. Doing it on my own, where you guys have. I watched. This was when you just had the M2M website, so I watched all the informational videos on there on how the process works, and then you had all the links to, like, if this is one of your things you're claiming, then this is kind of how that one works. And yeah, because the verbiage and everything really matters with the VA. Like, even if you have the issue but you don't say the right thing, then they're gonna basically say you don't have it. um
Right. And I think that's how they structure their whole system. Again, I've been down too many rabbit holes and have, tinfoil hats all in my closet from it all. But like the truth is when you see something enough times, you kind of see how they structure, people that have real problems, even if their provider, even if it's a VA doctor, civilian physician, surgeon, says the right things like, hey, this is the reality, this is what's going on. Clearly it's traumatic or chronic or even behavioral health wise or medical issues. But then there's this disconnect between the subjective story from the claimant, the veteran, the actual medical evidence, but then there's this third component where it's like that independent review and framing of it all, right? And then it gets handed after those three steps to the VA, right? And then that's where even nowadays it's still true. Like there's a Wizard of Oz curtain behind that fourth
yeah,
step of the actual review and ratings decision, which is, I think that's where a lot of the shade happens. So they expect most people to trip up either in step 2 or 3, but that step 4 is when they definitely aren't in our favor. But we try
right.
to get ahead of that with how we structure things. But kind of back to your story, I'm not going to get too personal with you, but at the same time, I think it's an interesting position because I talk to a lot of people who are hesitant to talk about the struggle and, going through buds. I didn't go to the buds, but, I was in the surgery world, right? And when you lose your identity of your purpose and what you thought you were going to do, and life throws you curveballs, whether it's physical, mental, relationship wise, it's hard, right? And people like me and you and most people that were in the service don't like to admit that they're struggling, right? Certainly not the doctors, because there's negative consequences of talking about depression, anxiety, anger, right?
Right.
Hopelessness, self-worth things. But the people that I've known, and even myself, I went through a time where I didn't get to do orthopedic surgery because of politics. And, while it's not buds and not your exact story, there's similarities where
Absolutely.
I was angry, and it wasn't fair, and it wasn't right. And I got depressed, and I was super anxious, and I struggled, but I didn't tell anybody for sure. And,
Yeah.
when I came out making my claim, I had no intention of, kind of like you, it's like, I don't want to complain. It's ridiculous. Like, why would I do that? But the truth is that it was there. And so I, swallowed my pride a little bit and just went down the path. And that's where I kind of saw the whole system for what it was. And, the reality is, you did very well in your musculoskeletal ratings. Obviously, that was a great job, how that played out. A lot of people don't have that luxury, right? Like, they get kind of small ratings in those areas, but the high yield categories are typically behavioral health and maybe a couple medical ones on the side. But, the goal is to get to 100%, right? Because it's life changing. Like now look at you, right? You got permanent and total, 100%. Your family, whether you have a family now or in the future, now can get healthcare through the Champ VA. You've got tons of extra benefits as far as the VRE program. It's just, doors open. And, I'm a big believer in, taking care of our guys in our community, because, buying bracelets, suicide awareness, that kind of stuff, good for the people who do that. But in my belief is that doing what it takes to actually provide people that safety net that they've earned prevents a lot of tragic catastrophe in people's lives. And, obviously, $50,000 a year tax-free is great, but it's not going to bring eternal happiness, right? It's not, $5 million a year, even that, but it prevents just that despair, right?
Yeah.
And then when you have that to lean back on, where you can pay your bills, you have health insurance, your family is taken care of, it's amazing how the stress lifts a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you can really focus on what you really want to do with the rest of your life, right? I'm a testament to that. I hope you are. So what are your plans now, kind of on the other side of this big win for you?
Yeah, so going back a little bit still with the claim. So when I first submitted with your guys' help, I heard back first, and I think it was October, November last year. So relatively quick. 5-6 months. And I came back at, I think it was 90% the first time, and then resubmitted a couple of things, and then got to 100 within another 3 months or so. And I'd come in at a perfect time because the company I'd been working for as a gym, they ended up closing down. So I wouldn't have had an income really, at least for a little bit, until I figured something out. But so like you said, that eased a lot of that stress, and it's a reliable thing to have. And then now with that, I'm getting ready to go to school, back to school for physical therapy, actually. And so having that will allow me to just focus on school and not really have to work as much or at all, even with the GI Bill. So it's definitely a huge help to be able to really focus on what I want to do.
Absolutely, man. And the the reality is that even outside the GI Bill, there's retraining programs, the VRE. Actually, I use that program, which is kind of like the GI Bill, but it's really to kind of get you in a different field. Like I got my MBA through that recently, so the sky's the limit with what you can do with these. Obviously like tax breaks for buying a home and stuff like that, as far as like property taxes exemption depending on the state. But it's a good feeling to have that, because now that optimism creeps back in, right? It's like, hey, that something finally went my way, right? And like I know if you're anything like me, you can kind of relate to that. Like, damn, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong, and it just keeps cascading, right? And until something good happens, like a VA claim where now, hey, you're at 100%, it's a game changer. It's a game changer for me, and even as a physician, people that are struggling. I'm not saying that's you necessarily, but people are really down and out. Like that can be pivotal for the rest, your next decade of your life, and
Really is, yeah.
and then have a plan, right? And that's what I want to like impress on everybody is it's the money's great, sure, got it, but it goes beyond that because the money affords you the ability to think and not struggle to meet, do a job or something just to basically pay your bills. But then you can start to think about, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to build? How can I, maybe it's just you want to be, a baseball coach for your kid's team or be a better, spouse or something like that, or, just focus on hobbies, or maybe it's build a business. Maybe it's go back to school like you and me. But, you know, I'm a big believer in sharing these stories and people's, examples, not just to, give us credibility for what we do, but also like the good that comes out of it, because it goes beyond, exchanging a product for or money for a service or a product, because in the end, it's game changing, and it's so much momentum, like I mentioned before, but also like for our organization, because like you said, you heard from a friend, and that's how we work, right? That's how veterans work. We always got a buddy, and we trust the people that we trust, and very few people outside of that, right? Marketing campaigns to a degree, but we're very skeptical as a group. Like I'm that way. Like I don't trust what I see. It sounds too good to be true. It is. Can you speak to maybe like how we treated you from a financial standpoint, and like, did you feel like you got your money's worth with us, and how did we treat you?
I mean, there's really, if you invest in anything, like there's no better return than if you're able to get 100%. Like no kind of IRA or stock or anything is gonna give you that as from a financial standpoint. And like you said, it just allows you to be able to think, and not have to, work somewhere 8-10 hours a day while you're trying to figure out what you want to do. But yeah, you guys treated me great. Like, I think I definitely called you before like every appointment, after you already had like an hour meeting with me, just going through, what I had and the medical terminology for it, because I didn't know half of those words.
That you will
But
pretty soon going into PT. You're gonna know
oh
all of it.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, and then anytime I needed something, it's really nice to have the school app now too. You can just message on there. But I'm pretty sure I called you or Cole or Joe. Um, I called each one of you for sure. If I ever had a question, and I never had to wait to get a response back. Like you guys answered right away. And um, as far as the financial standpoint, it was next to nothing for the
Yeah,
help of what the return is. So
now look at you making at least 4K a month or something around there, right? Depending
yeah,
on dependents and stuff.
right.
Tax free. That's again game changer. Um, I appreciate the time today. What would you tell somebody, if they heard our name? Now we're Woobie, right? And I want to talk about that for a second, because you talked about the investment in the IRA and the actual return on your investment of, into our company, right? Which is a huge leap of faith, right? But the truth is that, the old name Multimillions, I used to kind of, when I first heard of it, I kind of laughed like that's kind of gimmicky. But then do the math, because now how old are you? Like, what are you, 30 something?
In my 20s.
There you go. Young as could be.
Yeah.
You do the math over, with COLA increases over the next 50 years, it's multiple millions of dollars in just payments, compensation, but also in benefits. So the name's kind of fitting, the previous name, we're Woobie now, where it's like, everybody has the connotation of, the Woobie being one of the best things, at least when I was in, like, that was the best piece of gear I had. And it was something you kind of depend on. But what would you tell somebody that heard from a friend, or caught us on social media or LinkedIn your way about us? What advice would you give them directly?
I would say, first of all, if they're still skeptical about something, you guys have that initial call that is no commitment or no costs to see what they're about and what the process is. So there's really no hurt to at least do that. And also, like, I've had other friends that some of them have used you guys and some of them haven't. And the ones that have definitely have way better results. So, you can do it on your own, but It's going to take a lot more time from research, submitting. You're probably going to have to resubmit many more times. Because if you don't do it right the first time, it makes it much harder, kind of like you were talking about. So it just saves a lot of time and money, really, using you guys. So that's what I would say there.
Awesome, man. Well, we're proud of what we do because, again, as kind of a newer company, there's, some of our competition's been in the market for a long time, structured very differently because, we're not run by a law firm. We're not using the banner of, veteran owned, that kind of stuff. We're made up of veterans, and, not just because we're veterans, because let's be honest, I had a lot of people that I served with that I didn't like and I wouldn't trust with anything, right? We all kind of know those types.
Yeah.
But everybody that works with us, we're a close knit team. Everybody's really good.
And I'd
And
like to add one thing too. Sorry
yeah,
to cut you off.
no,
Just even for anyone that's using you guys or is thinking about it, if you do get to 100%, they keep helping you if you need anything else. Like I messaged, I think it was either you or Cole, I'm pretty sure, and Chelsea on the school app, and just some questions about certain benefits. And it's like, it's a whole community. It's not just like, oh, you got that, we're done with you, on to the next person. Like, you can, talk to other people in there, or if you have questions, you guys are helpful with that.
yeah, man, that's the idea of it without just, being all soft and stuff. Oh, community, it's true because, whether somebody gets to 100%, in a year or quickly, or they're just going for a quick increase or their first claims and it's dragging out, the reality is that we want guys like you to still, either participate, talk to people, solve some problems, because that's kind of, that's what we want, because it's not a top-down approach. Obviously, as a physician, like I have a certain role as a chief medical officer, do certain things. Our C-suite with Cole and Joe have certain jobs. Josh running the operations, Chelsea, doing her thing on school and the platform, and then you got Devin doing the main outreach with the CSR work. But reality is we're all in that position too, and like we problem solve. No one has, no one's an emperor. No one has every single answer. We work as a team, and as we grow that community, you guys are part of that. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's true, because your experience is different than the other guy who got 100% or somebody who got denied for some things. And it's the way you beat the VA with truth and above board is problem solving, never giving up. And that's what I love about what we do is we never give up. We get curveballs. It's frustrating to me because the VA is a very variable system, right?
Yeah.
I'll just say it nicely like that. You can submit the same type of claim with the same type of evidence, and they give you different results every time. And it's frustrating because then, obviously people want to know, well, how long, what am I going to get for this? And my answer is always, who knows? And that's a bad answer. I don't like it, but that's the reality is that, we're very adaptable to make things happen as, and we talk about, being on a team and whatnot. But as long as the goal and the mission is centric, which is to maximize somebody's ratings with not being rushed and hurried, making false promises. And that's what I run into with some of our competition when I look, and did look before I even started working with Woobie and M2M, was they make false promises at the front. We do the exact opposite, make zero promises. Now,
I'll say too, a lot of those other companies are charge a way bigger fee too, because I didn't just look into you guys, but that was part of it too, that they charge, I mean, a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, and a lot of the back pay stuff, we've modified, and we've kind of tried to set ourselves apart in that, now with new enrollees, we're not going after back pays, we're not doing these kind of things, but we're a little larger upfront fee, but it's a membership base now, which I think is the right model going forward, realistically.
Absolutely.
Because, and that takes trust, right? But I think it also weeds out people who are just toe in the water and trying to, because people try to use companies too, right? Don't pay, do that kind of stuff. We want people that are serious, that are realists, knowing what we're up against. And that's why we share these things on school and videos like this, because it's not secret information. There's no claims insider, I got the secret button to press or the secret document that you need that you just got to pay me a la carte for. It doesn't work like that. There are no secrets. This stuff should be common sense, is that you have to have a solid foundation of what you actually have in your medical record, how you verbalize it, how the back end documentation supports that, and then how it's handed to the VA, right? The rest of it's out of our hands. And, that's the way it works. And I think being transparent about that and knowing that sometimes it's a battle, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 different claims, different angles, how you claim things, like you said, how you even word what you're claiming.
Right.
And so we want people to know that, hopefully they use us to help them, like you said, in a expedited fashion. But even if not, I think we make our community a better place if people use our resources as opposed to just, getting on Reddit, just, Google searching a million different things and kind of sifting out. Everything we put out there is true by the way we see it, right? Use it, share it with your friends. You don't have to sign up to get the knowledge and talk to people. And that's what I think, where that kind of golden rule comes in, is that I know I can speak for myself and a lot of people that I work with. If you just treat everybody right and do your best for every single person one at a time, it all works out in the end. As
Absolutely.
an individual or as a company, I think that doing things the right way, especially with our community, because people know when they're being fed BS, people know when they're authentic, people are authentic with them. And that's what I love about Woobie, is that we treat people the way that we want to be treated, and we will continue to do that. So,
right.
Man, I'm real happy for you. Like, seriously, I see when we get these interviews and get to talk to people, this is the highlight of my week, legitimately, because again, it's not fun necessarily grinding, going through medical records, drafting up, DBQs with Nexus letters and figuring out angles. Like, I don't mind doing it. Like, it's part of that's the job.
Yeah.
But really, it's celebrating the victories, because that's what it's all about. And
definitely.
Man, I'm happy for you, sincerely.
Thank you
for the time and talking to me, and thanks for sharing your
One
story.
more thing I'll add too is just another piece of advice I thought about is I submitted quite a few buddy letters as well. So if anybody's submitting a claim, I think that really does help. I probably submitted 10 to 15 of people that were with me when, everything, whether it was an injury or going through some mental stuff, whatever, when they were able to witness that. So.
Yeah, I think that makes a big point. Some people, don't do that, and we encourage everybody kind of on the back end of our submissions. Now we do kind of a claim prep where we make it a real package, more uniformed. One of the big components of that is buddy letters in the right format, right? The right forms, and a good personal statement. Sometimes people gloss over that, cut corners on their personal statement or their buddy letters, or a spouse statement, layperson statements. And that's a mistake, because like you just said, why wouldn't you? That's the one thing you can control, right? Now, without the evidence and without the back end independent medical opinions, it's not going to be the only thing you need. But anytime you can get that done and add to your case with more data points, or like migraine logs, or behavioral health logs, or work statements, if you missed work or things like this because of your disability, you got to do that. And I tell people that as well. It's like, we can take you so far by doing our end and guiding you and counseling you on what you should do with us, but it's a partnership, right? You did a lot of the hard work, which is work. It's not fun. It's annoying. It's organization. It's communications. But if you do it and do work with us in that partnership, the results are better.
Yeah, it does work.
And you don't feel as alone. When I did my claim, I was completely alone, didn't really know the system or anything like that. And even as a physician officer, like I did med boards, all these things, it was super confusing and stressful. Like I was super stressed about it. The CMP exams, the submission, and like I knew the military well enough and the VA by proxy well enough. If I click one thing wrong, I know they're gonna deny everything. It's Murphy's law. But in the end, it's you need somebody to guide you, and information is power. So we have the good information. We'll also provide the independent work, right? And again, like with you and everybody listening, there's no shortcuts, right? So do the hard work, get the buddy statements, trust us, do what we tell you. And it's not easy. It's a partnership. A lot of the other companies and even VSOs kind of just rush it through to be done with it, like checkbox style, next. The goal is not to submit as quick as you can. The goal is to submit the best package as you can possible within a reasonable amount of time, right? Quality over quantity, typically, or even speed.
For sure.
Cool, man. You got anything else you want to talk about?
I think that's all that was on my mind as far as advice for it. So
Awesome, man. Well, listen, I say this to people, but I mean it. Like, you ever need anything, letter of rec, those kind of things, be happy to do that with you. Hope you stay in touch and
awesome.
keep reaching out and keep people plugged in, keep doing good stuff out in the world. So use that as
Sounds
an
good.
opportunity.
All right, thank you.
All right, Skyler, take it easy, brother.
All right, you too.